When I first pitched my cookbook in 2022, I pitched it with the title Homemade, like 2 words, homemade. I thought it was the most clever title, and I thought I would be devastated if I ever lost it. Turns out it's 2 years later, my book is launched. I lost that title. Okay, lost is the wrong word. I got a better title. But let's back up, because the reason I was so attached to the title Homemade is that a year before, when I was not ready to write a cookbook, people kept trying to get me to write a cookbook, and they were like, hire a writer, hire a recipe developer, just slap your name on it, make a ton of money. It felt really gross, and in a moment of exasperation, I turned to my fiance and I was like, I just want to write a cookbook that makes people cook something that makes them feel like home. And it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, screw it, I'll just write that. Because I didn't want to write a cookbook just to slap my name on a cookbook, which P.S. a lot of people do that. I wanted to write a cookbook that was useful, interesting, adaptable, repeatable, transformable. I wanted the recipes to have a life in your kitchen. So it went from a book about home to a book about cooking for your home. And it still does not get old that I get to show the recipes next to the book photo now. Which, yes, I will probably be sharing more recipes and probably spilling more cookbook tea. Oh, and the title of the book, by the way, is Justine Cooks, because the underscore is silent. Good morning. I have my breakfast. I thought we could eat it and chat about this, because it is important. Also because my donation receipts came in. Not that you guys need receipts to believe me, but they are helpful to have. Now, this is an initiative that I started on my Instagram in the fall. You can pause to read. But essentially, half of my blog revenue from November, which is my largest month of the year, went to a split between World Central Kitchen and Doctors Without Borders, and a portion of my blog proceeds have been going ever since. We've raised in excess of $15,000, but I need to update that amount. Now, this is not to negate the efforts that you're seeing go viral on TikTok. Those are also amazing efforts. This is the one that I chose in the fall as the best move for me because I knew they were organizations that had a strong history of boots on the ground operations, and let's say that for some reason they had to stop aid to Palestine and Gaza, they would also be able to use that money in perpetuity. Transparently, the reason I didn't bring this to this platform, despite sharing it on Instagram and Instagram stories multiple times between then and now, is transparently, and like I'm even shaking now, I was scared. I am not scared of losing followers or losing likes. I lose followers for people who hate my mascara and hate how I speak every day. Like that's not my concern. My concern is that even sharing that post, it invited so much vitriolic rhetoric, so many insults of my intellect and my character. It looped me in with a lot of arguments that I wasn't making. It misconstrued my words. And I thought bringing that to this platform would just make it worse. And even that Instagram post invited a lot of people arguing with each other and a lot of hate. And I didn't want to foster that environment here in my space where I'm really not an authority on this. And most of all, I didn't want my call for human aid to make any part of my audience, any person in my audience feel isolated or feel like I was abandoning them. So all that being said, my efforts are still ongoing, and I'm doing it in the way that I feel I can be most impactful. There are going to be millions of arguments in the comments that I could do more, and there's always space to do more, but I am doing it where I feel like I am giving it to the organizations that I truly believe in, that I can get money to the fastest, that can get aid out the fastest. And you can agree, you can disagree. I've made peace a long time ago that I'm never going to be saying the right thing for everybody, but activism is not about aggrandizing the activist, it's about helping the cause. And I do ask that you just give grace to your creators and hope that if you feel like you're following the right people, those people have empathy and are doing the right thing. And lastly, I hope you'll understand that with this effort ongoing, I am going to keep this account an account about my niche. I've tried to make videos that incorporate this activism into my niche, and they never sound authentic. They always sound like aggrandizing myself, and that's not the root of the activism that I want to be doing. So yeah, my silly little food account's doing its best. If you visit the blog, thank you for your donation. And I'm very scared of the comment section. You know when people are like, okay, it's not that you don't like tomatoes, you've just never had a good tomato? Well, I think that's the case with me and egg salad. Also, the Vital Farms bird of the month is named Justine, which I can't get over, and is probably the reason I'm finally attempting a good egg salad. And when I say good egg salad, I mean mayo-less egg salad. I don't totally mess with mayo, I do mess with QP. It's a personal flaw. I'm working on it. But this egg salad is tahini based with like vinegar, lemon juice, dill, parsley, all the things that make it creamy and a good egg salad consistency, but not weighing it down too much. It's also a take on the greeny tahini from my cookbook. Small plug. And I recently saw my friend A Cloudy Kitchen make her focaccia in muffin tins, and I was like, oh my God, what if I take my no-knead focaccia and make tiny little focaccias for the egg salad? Turns out they did not stay focaccia height. They definitely turned into bread muffins, something Walter knew but I didn't. But they were still very good vehicles because then you can just pack them back in the muffin tin. And they make 12, so you can like take them to a brunch party or something. I like how I bought 5 ears of corn to make a salad, and then literally the next day I was like, no, pasta. And the pasta happened because, one, I wanted it, but two, I've been playing around with corn broth because I'm working on like a lobster bisque recipe, but I was like, I'm going to be using corn broth, which is just taking the naked corn cobs and simmering them for a bit. Might as well use it for like a very good pasta. And it was somewhat cacio e pepe inspired because I did have a hunk of Parmesan I needed to use in my fridge. And give me 2 burners and I'm immediately dangerous. I take out my corn cobs and then I scoop that water in with the corn, onion, garlic mixture, and I blend that up and that becomes corn sauce. And then I was filming this on Sunday just for fun, but in the real recipe I retested, I add pepper to this and it's so much better. It's like salty Parmesan, sweet corn. It's not too corny, but it's corny in a good way. And despite it looking fancy, the whole thing was pretty quick. And I think sacrificing a corn salad was well worth it. I've made the mature and responsible decision to take what was a scallop recipe and essentially turn it into a fillet of fish. And I made that decision because scallops are expensive. And also this makes it a little bit easier. You'll see what I mean when we get to step 4, I think. Now you saw I'm using sun gold tomatoes, which is an orange variety of cherry tomatoes. I find that they're a little sweeter and more concentrated in flavor, but you can totally use cherry tomatoes if that's all you have. And I like a recipe that's like take one pan and make it work kind of recipe. So the pan's first job is toasting breadcrumbs in olive oil, and then I use a little bit of the Calabrian chili oil in the jar that we get our Calabrian chilies from. And I set that aside. Season it with salt, and then I put the pan back over the heat, but you don't have to wipe it out like crazy. It doesn't need to be perfect. Also, wow, is that my cookbook in the background available for pre-order? Crazy. P.S. I think there are like 2 sun gold tomato recipes in the book because what I like is when you add them to aromatics, they melt down into nearly a sauce. And I think we finally reached step 4-ish because if we were doing scallops, we'd have to sear them in a separate pan. It would be a little bit more of a production, but halibut kind of just steams on the top for 6 to 8 minutes. And then if you put the breadcrumbs directly on top of the fish, it's like breading them, but not really breading them, if you get what I mean. And now you can skip the fillet of fish. I mean, I do know they're not the same. Welcome to episode 3 of the classics. And this time it's spinach and ricotta gnudi, the easiest of the dumplings, and I also think the best. And this episode of the classics is in support of the American Red Cross and their hashtag Give a Snack campaign. So if you text snack to 90999, you'll donate $10, and let's get into the recipe. So gnudi is the Tuscan word for naked, and it kind of just means like what you put in stuffed shells, only without the shell. So a little naked. I find it's easier than gnocchi or pasta because you don't really need any equipment, and also you're not going to work on a floured surface at all. You're going to use a cookie scoop to scoop out the dough that you made in a bowl and then dust it with semolina flour on the baking sheet and roll it up on the baking sheet, so no mess, no fuss. This can rest in your fridge for only an hour. I like to do 4 to 5, that's my sweet spot. And then gnudi actually set best when they're allowed to cool. So while you can scoop them directly from the pot into the sauce, I like to let them chill on a baking sheet for just a little bit before I do that. And I made a pesto butter sauce and a Calabrian butter sauce. I think I prefer the Calabrian. And if you enjoyed this recipe, I hope you'll consider supporting the American Red Cross.